As darkness descended, it became evident that no one would come to save Lance as he writhed in agony. The sound of snarling echoed from the shadows, and before he realized it, he found himself encircled by a pack of wolves. It seemed certain that he was about to become their next meal. Just then, a miracle occurred. As a child, Lance loved adventure. By the age of 6, he often wandered off on his own without telling his parents. He enjoyed doing risky things, like the time his mother caught him trying to play with a snake when he was just 9. Everyone who knew Lance could see that he craved excitement and wasn't afraid of danger. When he turned 17, Lance had an unforgettable adventure. He started exploring the deep forest. He told his parents he was going hiking, but he had a different plan. Instead of hiking, he went into the forest to remove traps that hunters had set for animals. Lance believed traps were cruel because they made animals suffer for a long time. He hated that animals had to go through such pain, so he often snuck into the forest with a bag of medical supplies to help free trapped animals. He knew he might get caught by the hunters, but he didn't care. He couldn't stand the thought of helpless animals suffering, so he felt he had to help them. One fateful day, Lance went into the forest after telling his parents he would be going hiking for a day. Since wild animals mostly avoided human beings, his parents agreed to let him go. However, they warned him to be back before dusk. Animals stayed away from people during the day, but at night they came out without hesitation. On that fateful day, Lance spent hours checking his usual spots for animal traps. He typically found 1 or 2 animals like rabbits or deer, but had never encountered a predator. After a quiet day, he decided to head home. As he descended a hill, he heard a whimper from a bush. Investigating, he discovered a small wolf cub caught in a large trap, clearly stuck for hours. Knowing the cub had struggled in vain, Lance quickly got to work with his tools. After about 20 minutes, he freed the cub and treated its injuries with the supplies he always carried. Despite treating the cub's injury, he noticed that the small animal was vulnerable in the wild without its mother to nurse and protect it. So Lance took the biggest risk of his life. He picked the cub up and put it in his backpack. He was going to take the poor thing home and care for it until it was strong enough to survive on its own in the wild. The next few months were hell for Lance. His parents did not want the wolf cub around, but Lance refused to budge. They told him that he would have to take full responsibility for it, and that is exactly what he did. He worked to buy the cub meat scraps from the butcher, built a cage for it to sleep in at night, and made sure he took the cub hiking at least once a week. For the first few weeks, he struggled with giving the wolf a name, but after a while, he decided to call it Trap. After 6 months of loving and bonding with Trap, Lance realized that the longer he kept the wolf with him, the harder it would be to release him into the wild. He took the wolf hiking without a leash on several occasions and just allowed it to roam around. After about 2 hours of hiking, Trap returned with a rabbit in its mouth. That was when Lance knew that it was time to let the young wolf go, and that is what he did. Many years passed, and Lance became interested in other things. He graduated high school and left his small town to live in the city. Unfortunately, his mother had fallen critically ill and needed help. His dad was also old. Lance did not want to get a stranger to live with his mother, so he decided to get a job that allowed him to work remotely. This meant that he was able to move back home and live with his mother full-time. Her illness was terminal, so she only had a few months to live. He wanted to spend those precious few months with her, and he also wanted to be there to console his father when she passed. In the months that followed Lance's move home, he became restless. He had become used to the daily adventures and drama of living in the city, but his small, lonely town offered none of that. All the neighbors were friendly, and everyone generally kept to themselves when they had to. So he decided to do the one thing he had always done as a kid. He decided to go up the mountains and free some animals. After hiking for about 4 hours and seeing no animals to free, he decided to go back home. Unfortunately, it was getting dark, but Lance did not care. He had walked these woods hundreds or even thousands of times as a child. He certainly knew what he was doing. So he simply took out his flashlight when it started getting dark. But things were about to get really bad for Lance. All of a sudden, he heard a crack, and the clouds began to gather. Before he knew what was happening, A torrential downpour was on its way. This reduced visibility and meant that Lance had to change trails since the one he was on could get flooded. As he switched trails, he suddenly found himself in an unfamiliar part of the woods. The rain was slowing down by now, and he felt the need to relieve himself. So he did something he would eventually regret. He dropped his bag by the side of the road and walked down a tiny bush path near the trail to do his business. Once he was done, he turned around to walk back to the main trail, and that was when it happened. He was struck by a sharp pain in his right foot. He instantly tried to remove his leg from the source of pain, but he could not. The instant he looked down, he knew that something had gone horribly wrong. His leg was now in a trap, and he had no tools to free himself. This trap was really sharp and was already tearing into his skin. The trap was affixed to a platform in the ground, so it was impossible for him to carry it with him to get to his bag. The trap was no doubt designed this way so that the prey would not carry it away. But now that Lance was caught in the trap, he was helpless. If only he could get to his bag and retrieve his tools, he would be able to free himself. As he thought about his options, the teeth of the clamp dug harder into his foot. The pain in his leg was increasing by the minute, and he was certain that if it continued, he was going to pass out eventually. Lance thought that was the worst situation he could have ever gotten into that day, but things were about to get even worse. As he cried out in pain, he was attracting a few unsavory characters, one of which was a pack of wolves that were on the hunt. Soon, Lance started to hear sinister snarls from the depths of the darkness that were beginning to surround him. The snarls were followed by beady eyes that shone in the darkness. Before he knew it, the leader of the wolf pack was standing above him. Just as the leader reached for Lance's throat, one of the other wolves jumped at him and injured him gravely. Lance recognized the wolf as Trap, who howled, causing the rest of the pack to retreat. Using all his strength, Lance signaled for his bag, and Trap fetched it for him. With his tools, Lance freed himself from the trap. Grateful, he rubbed Trap's head and kissed him, realizing that without the cub he had saved years ago, he might have died. As Lance headed home, Trap went in the opposite direction after saving him. When Lance shared his story with his family, they were amazed that Trap had performed a miracle and saved their son. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.